Welcome to the Chapter 2, Section 3 podcast on carbon compounds. And this is all about the element carbon, which is very important in life. So, chemistry of carbon. Organic chemistry, which is the part of chemistry that we're talking about, is all about the study of compounds that contain bonds between carbon atoms. And the important thing about carbon is that it has four electrons in the valence orbit. This is the second energy level, and these are the 4 electrons that it can use to form bonds with other covalent bonds with other atoms. So it has 4 options to do it. That's the most that a atom has. So it's very versatile in that. So it can bond to other carbon atoms, which gives it the ability to form chains that are pretty much unlimited in length. And here's a picture of fatty acids and unsaturated acids, and you can see the nature of this chain of carbons all coming along. And here's another chain here, and you're going to see other types of chains as we go along. So living organisms are beta molecules that consist of carbon and other elements, and they even can make rings here, and here's a ring you can see right there of carbon. So the point is that it can make large and complex structures, and there's millions of different ones that it can do. Macromolecules are larger molecules that are formed by a process called polymerization, and the smaller units called monomers join together to form polymers. So these small little parts being monomers, and then when these units are joined together in a process called polymerization, they then become a longer molecule called a polymer. So the 4 groups of organic compounds found in living things, and these are all made of carbon, are carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins. First, the carbohydrates. They are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms. The ratio of it is 1 carbon to 2 hydrogen to 1 oxygen. Here you can see some glucose and some fructose, which are sugars. And if you count, there are 6 carbons, there are 12 hydrogens, and there are 6 oxygens in each of these 2 molecules for a ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. What's the function of carbohydrates? They are the main source of energy for living things, and plants and some animals use it for structural purposes. We'll talk about that. And the breakdown of sugars, such as glucose, which is a carbohydrate, supplies immediate energy for all cellular activities. And living things could store extra energy in carbohydrates called starches. So here you can see a glucose molecule is a very small molecule, and if you put enough glucoses together, you end up with a starch. So starches and sugars are used by living things as a source of energy. This is immediate energy, and this is more long-term stored energy in the starch. So single sugar molecules are called monosaccharides, and you just saw that glucose molecule. And if you put them together in a long link, you form polysaccharides. If you put a bunch of monosaccharides together, if you put 2 together, you form a disaccharide, which is what sucrose is. Lipids. Lipids are generally not soluble in water, which is important when you see their function, and they're mostly made from carbon and hydrogen atoms. And here's a lipid right here, a triglyceride, and you can see they're all carbon and hydrogens, and you can see the long chains here. And note, there's parts to it. You have these long chains here, and then here you have this group in red called carboxylic acid, and then you see a glycerol. Common categories of lipids are fats, oils, waxes, and steroids. What's the function of lipids? They can be used to store energy. You saw that with fat. And they can be part of membranes and waterproof coverings. This is a cell membrane, and you can see all these red molecules here are are lipids that are providing the cellular wall, and they need to be able to repel water to keep water from going in and out of the keep the molecules from going in and out of the cell wall. So they're formed when a glycerol molecule combines with compounds called fatty acids, and these here, this would be a fatty acid here, and this is a saturated fatty acid, so it has a bunch of single bonds, so it's saturated, and this is it has the maximum number of bonds between the hydrogen atoms. You can see they're all bonded here, and this one is a one double bond here in a fatty acid, which you can see right here, makes an unsaturated fatty acid. And if there's more than one double bond, then it becomes polyunsaturated. And these tend to be liquid at room temperature, unsaturated fatty acids. Nucleic acids. Nucleic acids contain hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus. They contain 5 different elements, and these they're polymers assembled from monomers called nucleotides. And here's a nucleotide. It has 3 parts: a sugar, which is right here, a phosphate group, which is right here, and a nitrogenous base, which is right there. And what happen? And if you join them together, the nucleotides together, to form a polynucleotide or a nucleic acid. And you'll hear me say the word nucleic acid from now on. What's the function of nucleic acids? They can be used to store and transmit hereditary or genetic information. This you recognize as DNA. And there are 2 types of nucleic acids: ribonucleic acid and deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. And you can see this is a DNA molecule. One of the differences is that RNA contains ribose and DNA contains the sugar deoxyribose. Proteins. Proteins contain nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. I threw this picture of the protein to show you how complex it is. They're made of molecules called amino acids. The general structure of amino acid is the amino group, the carboxyl group, and then the R group at the end. And the R group can be different, which makes the amino acid different. And to what tells us how to put amino acids together is the instructions in DNA. And you can see these are all different amino acids in this chain, and they make up this small little ribbon-like part of this big protein molecule. What's the function of proteins? Well, you kind of know some of these. They're used to regulate the rate of cell process reactions. They're used in bones and muscles, and they're able to transport substances into and out of cells or to fight disease, and we'll talk more about transport role when we get to cell membranes. And they can have 4 levels of organization. Amino acids have a specific chain here. The chains can be twisted or folded. The chain itself can be folded, and then if it has more than one chain, each chain, here's a green one, here's a green one, here's a red one, has a different specific arrangement in space. And here's a concept map that kind of goes through all the parts that we just discussed here. And there are the 4 types of carbon compounds we talk about. These are what they consist of. Notice that these 2 right here are the monomers. And these are the atoms that they contain. And you can see that the first 2 here, carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, are pretty simple. And you can see that these contain nitrogen and phosphorus, and this one contains nitrous and nitrogen, so that's what makes them different.